The ground shook beneath Commander Zilneth's feet as another massive explosion lit up the sky above Veltar Prime. Through the crystal windows of the command center, he could see his beautiful world dying. The tall, glittering towers that had stood for thousands of years were cracking and falling like broken glass. Fires burned everywhere, and the screams of his people echoed through the communication channels. "Commander, the shield generators are failing," shouted Lieutenant Kexera from across the room. Her voice was shaking with fear. "We've lost 3 more sectors in the last hour. The creatures are getting closer to the city center." Zilneth closed his eyes for a moment, trying to block out the sounds of destruction. When he opened them again, he saw the nightmare that had haunted the galaxy for months. In the dark sky above his planet, hundreds of twisted bioships moved like living nightmares. They weren't built like normal spaceships. Instead, they looked like giant insects or diseased organs, pulsing with sickly light and covered in what looked like veins and tentacles. These were the Void Swarm, and they had already eaten 17 entire star systems. Every planet, every moon, every space station they touched was consumed and turned into more of these horrible creatures. The worst part was how smart they were. They learned from every battle, adapting and growing stronger with each world they destroyed. "Sir, incoming message from the orbital defense platforms," called out Communications Officer Velrax. His usually calm voice was breaking with emotion. "Admiral Tixoran reports that the defense fleet is down to less than 50 ships. The swarm has consumed our entire moon and is using the materials to build more biovessels." Zilneth felt his crystal-like skin grow cold. Their moon had been home to over 2 billion people. Now it was nothing but raw material for the enemy. He looked at the tactical display showing the battle raging above their world. Red dots representing swarm ships surrounded the few remaining blue dots of their defenders. It looked hopeless. "What about the Galactic Council fleet?" he asked, even though he already knew the answer. "Gone, sir," Velrax replied quietly. "The last transmission from Admiral Hextera was 12 hours ago. Her flagship was being consumed by one of the larger bioships. The entire Council Armada, 3,400 ships, they're all gone." The room fell silent except for the distant sound of explosions. Zilneth thought about those ships and the brave beings who had died trying to protect his world. Species from across the galaxy had sent their best warships to fight the swarm. The proud warrior fleets of the Keth Empire, the advanced technological ships of the Zuran Federation, even the mysterious vessels of the Shadow Collective had joined the fight. All of them were now nothing but scattered metal floating in space. "Sir," Lieutenant Kexera said softly, "what do we do now? There's nowhere left to run, no one left to call for help. We're the last free world in this sector." Zilneth stared at the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. Every major fleet in the galaxy had tried to stop the Void Swarm and failed. The Council's best scientists couldn't find a weakness in the creatures. Their most advanced weapons barely scratched the bioships before being absorbed and turned against them. But there was one option. One terrible, desperate option that no civilized being wanted to consider. "Open an emergency channel," he said slowly. "Maximum power, all frequencies." "Sir, to which system?" "Everyone else is either dead or evacuating." Zilneth took a deep breath. "To the Sol system." The entire command center went quiet. Even the sounds of battle outside seemed to fade away. Every being in the room stared at their commander with shock and horror. Sol was a forbidden word in galactic society, a name that parents used to scare children into behaving. "Commander," Velrax whispered, "the Sol system is under permanent quarantine. The Galactic Council voted unanimously 47 years ago. Those creatures, they're too dangerous. Too violent. They solve everything with warfare and destruction." "I know what they are," Zilneth replied, his voice getting stronger. "I was there when the Council made that decision. I saw the reports from their home world. Earth, they call it. A death world where everything tries to kill everything else. The creatures that evolved there learned to be perfect killers just to survive. He turned to face his terrified staff. I saw the footage of their wars. How they could take a peaceful planet and turn it into a battlefield in hours. How they fought each other with weapons that could destroy continents. The council was right to be afraid of them. Then why would we call them now? Asked Kexera. Outside, another explosion shook the building as more of their city was destroyed. Zilneth gestured toward the window where the Void Swarm's bioships blotted out the stars. Because look what happened without them, he said. We created a galaxy of peace and civilization. We banned weapons of mass destruction, limited military technology, and focused on art, science, and culture. And now that something truly dangerous has come for us, we have no way to fight back. He walked over to the communication console himself. Those humans from Earth may be violent savages, but there are violent savages. And right now, we need something more dangerous than the swarm. Sir, the quarantine barriers around their system are still active, warned Velrax. Even if we send a message, it might not get through. Then we use every transmitter on the planet, Zilneth ordered. Broadcast on every frequency. If even one message gets through. He began typing the transmission himself, his crystal fingers shaking as he worked. How do you ask for help from the beings you've spent half a century calling monsters? How do you beg the creatures you exiled to come and save you? This is Commander Zilneth of Veltar Prime to the Sol System, he spoke into the transmitter. Our world is dying. The Galactic Council fleets are destroyed. We know what you are. We know what you're capable of. And we know we have no right to ask this after what we did to you. He paused, listening to another building collapse somewhere in the distance. But we're begging you. Please help us. We were wrong about everything. We need the monsters we tried so hard to keep away. The message was sent across space toward the Forbidden Sol System, carrying the desperate hope of a dying world. Admiral Jack Morrison read the alien message one more time, his weathered hands gripping the holographic display. The desperate words from Commander Zilneth echoed in his mind as he stood in the command center of Terra Station, a massive space platform floating high above Earth. Through the reinforced windows, he could see his home planet spinning slowly below, blue and green and beautiful against the darkness of space. 47 years, he muttered to himself. 47 damn years since they last spoke to us. Colonel Rachel Barnes, his second-in-command, stepped up beside him. She was a tough woman who had worked her way up through the ranks, and Morrison trusted her judgment more than anyone else's. Sir, I've been going through the intelligence reports. This void swarm they're talking about, it's real. And it's bad. Morrison looked at her. How bad are we talking? 17 star systems completely gone, Barnes replied, pulling up a holographic map of the galaxy. Red zones marked where the swarm had struck. We're talking about hundreds of billions of lives. Entire civilizations just, eaten. Turned into more of these bioships. The Admiral stared at the map, watching as the red zones seemed to creep closer to Earth's sector. And the Galactic Council's fleets? Wiped out. Over 3,000 ships, including some of the most advanced vessels in known space. They lasted less than a week against this thing. Barnes shook her head. Jack, if they're calling us for help after all this time. Then they're scared out of their minds, Morrison finished. He turned away from the window and walked over to the main command console. Around them, hundreds of technicians and officers were monitoring screens, tracking communications, and maintaining the station that had been humanity's window to the stars for nearly 5 decades. Morrison remembered when the quarantine had first been put in place. He had been a young lieutenant then, fresh out of the academy and full of dreams about exploring the galaxy alongside alien civilizations. Instead, he had watched as species after species voted to cut Earth off from the rest of the universe. They called humans too violent, too dangerous, too unpredictable for civilized space. We solve our problems with violence, the Galactic Council had said. We're a primitive species that hasn't learned to live in peace. They pointed to humanity's history of wars, the weapons we had created, the way we had nearly destroyed our own planet before finally learning to work together. What they didn't understand was that all that violence, all those wars, had taught humanity something that no other species in the galaxy possessed: how to survive when everything wanted to kill you. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Commander Tony Rodriguez from the communications station. "We're getting more reports from our deep space monitoring posts. The Void Swarm isn't just attacking the Council worlds anymore. They're moving in all directions. At their current rate of expansion, they'll reach the quarantine barrier around our system within 6 months," Morrison said, finishing the thought. He had already done the math. The aliens weren't just asking for help out of desperation, they were running out of time, and so was Earth. Barnes moved closer and lowered her voice. "Jack, if we do this, if we break the quarantine, there's no going back. The galaxy will know what we've been building out here. All the projects, all the technology we've developed in isolation." Morrison looked around the command center at the humans working at their stations. These weren't the primitive savages the aliens thought they were. These were the descendants of a species that had learned to turn their violent nature into something productive. They had taken the lessons learned from centuries of warfare and applied them to exploration, technology, and defense. "Maybe it's time they learned the truth," he said. "Maybe it's time they understood that being from a death world isn't just about being violent. It's about being survivors." He walked over to the master control panel, a complex array of screens and buttons that could activate systems throughout the Sol system. His hand hovered over a specific control marked with red warning labels and multiple security locks. "Colonel Barnes," he said formally, "I'm about to activate Protocol Ragnarok. Are you with me on this?" Barnes straightened up and gave him a sharp salute. "All the way, sir. It's about time we showed the galaxy what humans are really capable of." Morrison pressed his palm against the scanner, and the computer requested voice authorization. "This is Admiral Jack Morrison, Commanding Officer of Terra Station. Authorization code Alpha 77 Tango. I am activating Protocol Ragnarok under emergency conditions. Wake up the fleet." Immediately, alarms began sounding throughout the station, not emergency alarms, but the deep, rhythmic tones that meant humanity's greatest secret was about to be revealed. Across the Sol system, signals raced through space at light speed, reaching hidden bases and concealed shipyards that had been waiting for this moment for decades. On Mars, massive hangars built into the planet's crust began opening for the first time in years. Ships that had been kept in perfect condition emerged into the sunlight, their hulls gleaming with advanced armor that could withstand attacks no Council vessel had ever imagined. In the asteroid belt, mining stations that appeared to be simple resource-gathering operations revealed their true purpose. What looked like mining equipment transformed into weapon systems, and cargo bays opened to release fleets of fighters and bombers that had been hidden among the rocks. Near Jupiter, within the swirling storms of the Great Red Spot itself, humanity's most ambitious project began to activate. Shipyards the size of cities had been built in the gas giant's upper atmosphere, using the planet's own resources to construct vessels that made the Council's largest dreadnoughts look like toys. "Status report," Morrison called out as the command center buzzed with activity. "Mars fleet is powering up, 200 vessels ready for deployment," reported one officer. "Asteroid defense grid coming online, 500 platforms armed and ready," called another. "Jupiter shipyards report full activation, the big ships are moving out," announced a third. Morrison watched the tactical display as thousands of indicators changed from red to green. Humanity had spent 47 years in isolation, but they hadn't wasted that time. They had built an armada that could challenge anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Sir," Barnes said quietly, "are we really ready for this? Once we leave the Sol system, once we engage these Void Swarm creatures, we'll be announcing to the entire galaxy that Earth is back." Morrison looked at the message from Commander Zilneth still glowing on his screen, then at the red zone spreading across the galactic map. Somewhere out there, Billions of beings were dying because the galaxy's peaceful civilizations had no idea how to fight a real war. Rachel, he said, they spent half a century calling us monsters because we came from a world that tried to kill us every day. They were afraid of us because we learned to be excellent at violence just to survive. He turned to face the viewport showing Earth below, where humanity had learned the hardest lessons the universe could teach. Well, now they need monsters. And we're the best monsters this galaxy has ever seen. Captain Mike Sullivan gripped the armrests of his command chair as reality twisted around the UES Retribution. The hyperspace jump was ending, and through the swirling blue energy outside the viewports, he could see stars beginning to appear. Behind his flagship, 437 other human warships were making the same transition from hyperspace back into normal space. "Jump complete, Captain," reported Navigator Lieutenant Bobby Chen from his station. "We are now at the edge of the Veltar system." Sullivan had been preparing for this moment for weeks, ever since Admiral Morrison had given him command of the first human fleet to leave the Sol system in nearly 50 years. But nothing could have prepared him for what he saw when the viewports cleared. "Sweet Mother of God," whispered Lieutenant Amy Foster from the sensor station, her face pale as she stared at her instruments. "Captain, you need to see this." The main display screen flickered to life, showing the Veltar system in all its horrible glory. What should have been a beautiful solar system with a bright yellow star and several inhabited planets was now a nightmare of destruction. The outer planets were gone completely, not destroyed, but consumed, leaving only empty space where worlds had once orbited. "Report, Lieutenant," Sullivan ordered, though his own eyes were already taking in the impossible sight before them. "Sir, I'm reading massive biosignatures throughout the system," Foster replied, her voice shaking slightly. "The largest one is. Jesus Christ, Captain, it's 53 kilometers long and still growing." On the screen, the Void Swarm's mothership came into view, and Sullivan felt his stomach turn. It wasn't built like any spaceship he had ever seen. Instead, it looked like some kind of diseased organ floating in space, pulsing with sickly green and yellow lights. Massive tentacles stretched out from its main body, each one several kilometers long, and they were feeding on the debris of what had once been Veltar's largest moon. "That thing is eating an entire moon," said Lieutenant Commander Rita Jackson from the tactical station. "It's literally consuming the rock and metal and turning it into more bioships." Around the mothership, hundreds of smaller vessels moved like a swarm of angry insects. These bioships ranged in size from small fighters to massive cruisers, but they all shared the same organic, living appearance. They pulsed and writhed as they moved, and Sullivan could see that many of them had what looked like eyes or mouths opening and closing along their hulls. "Captain," Foster continued, "I'm reading over 2,000 individual swarm vessels in the system. They've formed a complete blockade around Veltar Prime. Nothing could get through that." Sullivan studied the tactical display, watching as red dots representing enemy ships completely surrounded the blue dot that was the Veltar homeworld. "Any signs of life from the planet?" "Minimal communications coming from their capital city, sir. From what I can tell, there might be 10,000 survivors left hiding in underground shelters." "The rest of the planet?" Foster paused, checking her readings again. "Sir, I'm showing massive biosignature readings from the planet's surface. The swarm has been landing there and consuming everything they find." The bridge fell silent as the crew processed this information. An entire civilization that had numbered in the billions just days ago had been reduced to a handful of survivors cowering in bunkers while monsters ate their world. Sullivan thought about the desperate message they had received from Commander Zilneth. The alien had been begging for help, admitting that the Galactic Council had been wrong about humanity, pleading for the very violence they had once feared. Looking at the destruction before them, Sullivan understood why. "All right, people," he said, standing up from his command chair. "We came here to do a job. Lieutenant Jackson, signal the fleet. All ships, weapons free. We're going to show these things what happens when you threaten innocent people." "Sir," Jackson replied, "the alien formations are incredibly dense. Any normal fleet would have to attack slowly, carefully, to avoid collisions and friendly fire incidents. Sullivan smiled grimly. Good thing we're not a normal fleet, then. Foster, are you tracking all friendly vessels? Yes, sir. All 438 ships showing green on my board. Perfect. Jackson, execute attack pattern Delta 7. Around the Retribution, the human fleet began to spread out in a formation that would have been impossible for any other species in the galaxy to attempt. Individual ships accelerated to combat speed and began weaving between each other in complex patterns, each captain trusting their fellow humans to be exactly where they were supposed to be at precisely the right moment. This was something that only a species from a death world could pull off. On Earth, humans had evolved as persistence hunters, capable of tracking prey across vast distances while coordinating with other members of their pack. They had learned to fight as groups against predators much larger and stronger than themselves. Every human captain in the fleet knew exactly what their fellow captains were thinking because they all shared the same predator instincts. My God, breathed Navigator Chen, watching as human ships dove toward the swarm formation at speeds that should have resulted in collisions. They're moving like a school of fish. More like a pack of wolves, Sullivan corrected. Foster, I want targeting solutions on that mothership's feeding tentacles. We cut off its ability to grow first, then we kill it. Aye, sir. Marking targets now. On the tactical display, Sullivan watched as his ships penetrated the void swarm's defenses like bullets through paper. The bioships tried to intercept them, but they were too slow and too clumsy compared to vessels designed and crewed by humans. Every time a swarm vessel tried to ram one of the human ships, the human vessel was already somewhere else, firing precisely targeted shots at the creature's weak points. Captain, the lead elements are engaging the mothership now, reported Jackson. They're targeting the feeding appendages just like you ordered. Through the viewport, Sullivan could see flashes of weapons fire as his ships attacked the massive creature. Human plasma cannons and missile systems, weapons that violated several Galactic Council treaties about warfare, tore into the mothership's flesh. The creature writhed in what might have been pain, its tentacles thrashing wildly as it tried to defend itself. Sir, we're getting a communication from the planet's surface, Foster announced. It's Commander Zilneth. He's asking if we're really human ships. Sullivan activated the communication system. This is Captain Mike Sullivan of the United Earth Space Command. Commander Zilneth, we got your message. Sorry it took us so long to respond, but we had to break through a quarantine barrier first. There was a long pause, then Zilneth's translated voice came through the speakers, filled with disbelief and hope. Captain Sullivan, is it really you? Are you really here? Sullivan looked out at his fleet as they systematically dismantled the void swarm with the kind of brutal efficiency that only a Deathworld species could manage. Yes, Commander. The humans are here. And we're going to clean up this mess. But how? The Council's greatest fleets couldn't stop them. 3,000 ships. Commander, Sullivan interrupted, watching as another section of the mothership's hull exploded under human weapons fire. You forgot something important about humans. We didn't learn to build ships to explore the galaxy. We learned to build them to survive in a universe that wants to kill us. He smiled as he watched the first of the mothership's feeding tentacles get severed by concentrated plasma fire. And we're very, very good at it. Admiral Tom Rodriguez stood perfectly still on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the final moments of the battle through the massive viewports. The last void swarm bioship was dying, its organic hull splitting apart as concentrated plasma fire from 3 human destroyers tore through its vital organs. Green fluid leaked from the creature's wounds, freezing instantly in the vacuum of space. That's the last of them, sir, reported Commander Kate Williams from the tactical station. She was a veteran officer who had served on deep space patrol missions for over 20 years, and Rodriguez had never seen her look so satisfied with a battle's outcome. All swarm vessels in the system have been neutralized. Rodriguez nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the debris field that stretched across thousands of kilometers of space. Where 6 hours ago there had been over 2,000 alien bioships threatening to consume an entire star system, now there was nothing but floating chunks of dead organic matter and the twisted remains of their weapons. "Give me a full casualty report, Commander," he ordered. Williams checked her screens, and Rodriguez could see the relief on her face as she read the numbers. 17 ships reporting various degrees of damage, sir. The UES Montana took some hits to her forward armor plating, and the UES Colorado has minor engine problems, but nothing that can't be repaired. No ships lost, no crew casualties reported. Rodriguez felt a grim satisfaction at those numbers. The combined fleets of the Galactic Council, over 3,000 of the most advanced warships in known space, had been completely destroyed by the Void Swarm in less than a week. Yet humanity had just wiped out the entire swarm presence in this system without losing a single person. "What about the mothership?" he asked. "Completely neutralized, sir," Williams replied. "Our science teams managed to collect samples from 17 different bioship types during the battle. Dr. Hayes reports that they've already identified 3 major weaknesses in the swarm's biological structure that we can exploit if we encounter them again." That was another thing that separated humans from the other galactic species. While the Council fleets had fought desperately just to survive, the human fleet had been conducting scientific research even in the middle of combat. Every shot fired, every maneuver executed, had been designed not just to destroy the enemy but to learn from them. "Sir, we're receiving multiple communications from various sources throughout the system," announced Lieutenant Commander Bob Patterson from the communications station. "Council ships that managed to survive the initial swarm attack, refugee vessels, and several alien species I've never heard of before. They all want to know the same thing. Which is who we are, sir. And how we managed to do what their entire combined military couldn't accomplish." Rodriguez walked over to the main communications console, his boots clicking on the metal deck plates. Around him, the bridge crew continued their work with the quiet efficiency that had become humanity's trademark during their decades of isolation. These weren't the primitive savages the aliens had imagined. These were the products of a world that had taught them to be perfect at violence just to survive childhood. "Patch me through to all frequencies in the system," Rodriguez ordered. "Every ship, every station, every survivor who can receive a signal. It's time we had a proper introduction." The main display screen activated, showing Rodriguez's face to every being in the Veltar system. He was a tall man with graying hair and scars on his face from a shuttle accident years ago. His uniform was crisp and professional, but his eyes carried the hard look of someone who had seen too much combat. "This is Admiral Tom Rodriguez of the United Earth Space Command," he began, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable authority. Behind him, through the bridge viewports, the burning remains of the Void Swarm mothership created a spectacular light show as its biomatter continued to break down. "I know many of you are confused right now. You're wondering where we came from, how we got past the quarantine barriers, and why we decided to intervene in this situation." He paused, letting his words travel across space to the various alien ships and stations that were listening. Rodriguez had been preparing for this moment for years, knowing that eventually humanity would have to break their isolation and face the galaxy that had rejected them. 47 years ago, your Galactic Council made a decision. You looked at humanity and saw a species that was too violent, too dangerous, too primitive for civilized space. You called us Deathworlders, savages who solved problems with warfare instead of diplomacy. You were afraid that our presence would corrupt your peaceful galaxy. Through the communication channels, Rodriguez could hear the whispered translations as his words were converted into dozens of alien languages. Some species were chattering excitedly, others seemed shocked into silence. "So you quarantined us. You built barriers around our solar system and told us we weren't welcome among the civilized peoples of the galaxy. You said we needed to evolve beyond our violent nature before we could join your community of peaceful species." Rodriguez's voice hardened slightly as he continued. "Well, congratulations. You were absolutely right about one thing: we are dangerous. We are violent. We do solve problems with warfare when necessary. But you were wrong about everything else. He gestured toward the viewport, where the debris of the void swarm floated in space like a graveyard of nightmares. While you built your perfect, peaceful civilization, something was coming for you. Something that your diplomacy couldn't negotiate with, your science couldn't understand, and your limited military forces couldn't stop. The alien chatter on the communication channels had grown louder now, with multiple species trying to respond at once. Rodriguez ignored them and continued his speech. The void swarm consumed 17 star systems and killed hundreds of billions of beings while your council debated what to do about them. Your combined fleets, 3,000 ships representing the finest military technology in the galaxy, lasted less than a week against creatures that we just eliminated in 6 hours. He stood straighter, his voice growing stronger. Do you know why? Because while you were building a galaxy of peace and prosperity, we were learning how to survive in a universe that wants to kill everything. We didn't waste those 47 years feeling sorry for ourselves. We built ships that could fight things you never imagined. We trained crews who could think and react faster than any species in your council. Rodriguez looked directly into the camera, knowing that his words were being heard by survivors huddled in bunkers on Veltar Prime, by alien commanders on damaged warships, and by politicians in the Galactic Council chambers thousands of light-years away. The quarantine is over, he declared. Humanity is back in galactic affairs, and this time we're not asking for your permission. We're not requesting membership in your council or begging for a seat at your table. Behind him, the last pieces of the swarm mothership finally broke apart completely, creating a brilliant explosion of light that illuminated the entire system. We're here to do what we've always done best, survive, and help others survive. Whether you like it or not. The communication ended, leaving the Veltar system in stunned silence as the galaxy tried to process what they had just witnessed. Humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. Fleet Admiral David Carter walked through the grand corridors of the Galactic Council building on Prime Station, his military boots echoing against the polished crystal floors. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Veltar, and everything in the galaxy had changed. The same alien politicians who had once voted to quarantine humanity behind impenetrable barriers were now desperately trying to figure out how to deal with their new reality. The council chambers were buzzing with nervous energy when Carter entered. Representatives from 43 different species filled the circular room, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, electronic tones, and translated speech. At the center of it all sat the High Council, the 12 most powerful beings in galactic politics, and they all looked terrified. Carter took his place at the speaker's podium, a position that no human had occupied for nearly 50 years. Behind him, holographic displays showed the current state of galactic defense, or rather, what humanity had built to replace the shattered remains of the Council's military forces. Admiral Carter, wheezed Ambassador Trill Knox, the slug-like representative of the Hagirian Empire. His translated voice carried obvious discomfort as he spoke. We have reviewed your protection proposals, and frankly, they seem quite extensive. These military requirements you're requesting seem rather aggressive for what you call a peacekeeping force. Carter looked at the alien ambassador with the same expression he might use when explaining basic mathematics to a child. Ambassador Trill Knox, with all due respect, your previous peacekeeping forces lasted exactly 4 days against the Void Swarm. Our so-called aggressive measures eliminated the entire threat in 6 hours. A murmur ran through the chamber as various species translated and discussed his words. Carter could see the fear in their alien faces as they remembered just how easily their greatest military achievement had been swept aside by creatures they didn't understand. The facts are simple, Carter continued, gesturing to the holographic displays behind him. Your traditional approach to galactic defense was built on the assumption that all conflicts could be resolved through diplomacy and limited police actions. You designed your fleets to handle pirates and smugglers, not existential threats to civilization. The displays showed the new reality of galactic defense. Human patrol fleets were now stationed at key hyperspace junctions throughout Council space, their advanced warships monitoring traffic and scanning for threats. Early warning stations equipped with sensors far beyond anything the Council had ever developed were positioned 3-star systems out from major population centers, creating a detection network that could spot danger long before it arrived. Most impressive of all were the massive defense platforms humanity had begun constructing at the edge of known space. These weren't simple weapons platforms, they were fortress cities in space, each one capable of housing thousands of personnel and equipped with enough firepower to stop entire invasion fleets. The Veltar crystalline people have already signed our protection agreement, Carter announced, noting how several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. 17 other star systems have requested similar arrangements. The Corvani Federation, the Altarian Trade Union, even the isolationist Nexus Collective have all asked for human military protection. Ambassador Ythera of the Altarian Trade Union stood up, her blue-scaled form shimmering under the chamber's lights. Admiral Carter, we appreciate what humanity did at Veltar. Truly, we do. But your terms, requiring bases in our territory, unrestricted access to our shipping lanes, the right to override local military commanders in emergency situations, are exactly what we need to protect you effectively, Carter interrupted. Ambassador, the universe is not a safe place. While you've spent the last 50 years building a galaxy of peace and commerce, threats have been growing in the darkness beyond your borders. The Void Swarm was just the beginning. He activated a new holographic display showing deep space scan results. Our monitoring stations have detected at least 12 different potential threats in unexplored regions of the galaxy. Unknown species with advanced technology, rogue artificial intelligences, bioweapons that make the Void Swarm look like a minor pest problem. Your choice is simple, accept our protection terms, or face these threats with the same military forces that couldn't stop the swarm. The chamber fell silent as alien politicians processed this information. These were beings who had grown comfortable in their peaceful galaxy, species that had forgotten what it was like to face real danger. Commander Jennifer Walsh, Carter's aide and one of the most decorated officers in the human fleet, stepped forward with a data pad. She was a compact woman with short brown hair and the kind of steady demeanor that came from years of combat experience. Sir, priority message from Terra Station, she announced, handing him the pad. Carter read the message quickly, and despite his efforts to maintain a neutral expression, he couldn't quite hide his satisfaction. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored representatives, he announced, his voice cutting through the nervous chatter in the chamber. I've just received word that our deep space monitoring stations have detected 3 new potential threats at the galaxy's edge. The chamber erupted in panicked sounds as 43 different species expressed alarm in their various ways. Electronic chirps, worried whistles, and the rapid clicking of mandibles filled the air. These are species we've never encountered before, Carter continued, raising his voice above the din. Our analysis suggests they possess advanced military technology and have already consumed at least 2 star systems outside Council space. They don't appear interested in diplomacy. Ambassador Trilnox's slug-like form had turned a sickly pale color. Admiral, surely the Council's diplomatic corps could attempt to establish communication. Ambassador, Carter said, his voice carrying a tone of infinite patience, these beings have been broadcasting the screams of their victims across subspace frequencies. I don't think they're interested in talking. He gestured to Commander Walsh, who activated new displays showing long-range sensor readings and intelligence reports. Fortunately, humanity has been preparing for exactly this type of scenario. Our deep space fleets are already moving to investigate these threats. Our advanced scout ships are gathering intelligence on their capabilities and intentions. Carter looked around the chamber at the frightened alien faces staring back at him. Consider this a free demonstration of what human protection can offer. While you debate and discuss, we're already taking action to keep your civilization safe. As he prepared to leave the chamber, Carter reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. 6 months ago, he had been a fleet commander in humanity's hidden armada, preparing for a war that might never come. Now he was the most powerful military figure in galactic politics, commanding respect from species that had once considered humans primitive savages. The irony wasn't lost on him. The very traits that had made humanity unwelcome in civilized space, their violence, their paranoia, their constant preparation for war, were now the galaxy's greatest hope for survival. "The universe is not a safe place," he said as he reached the chamber doors. "It never has been. You just forgot that while you were building your perfect civilization. Fortunately for you, we never forgot. We've been getting ready for the monsters in the dark while you were enjoying the light." Outside the chamber's massive windows, human patrol ships moved through space with the deadly grace of apex predators. Their hulls gleamed with advanced armor, their weapon systems tracked potential threats with inhuman precision, and their crews stood ready to face whatever new horrors the universe might throw at them. The galaxy had finally learned why Earth was called a death world, and why sometimes, that was exactly what the universe needed. The age of peaceful exploration was over. The age of human protection had begun. Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.